Yeah, myofascial release is probably the number one thing I could recommend to just general weekend warriors of any fitness endeavor, running, football, hockey. You know, there's lots of guys out here that like work a regular job and go like smash each other playing beer league hockey. And like it just gets more and more dangerous as you get older. Those hamstrings and, you know, guys are tearing groins all the time because they don't stretch and they work in an office. And then they go and play hockey and they just have a collision that when they were 20, they would have been fine. But like their groin is 40% less flexible now. And it's like a dry rubber band. Fucking, there she goes.
Sounds like my arms when I was arm wrestling
a
couple weeks ago.
Tell us about that, Dan. Funny thing, you're not the first person to have that conversation with me recently, actually. Some other buddies were out having a good time. They were actually in like kind of a rough place really late at night. And one of them's a fairly big gentleman. Like he's an imposing figure. And like a random comes across the bar and challenged him to an arm wrestle. That obviously creates a cascade of arm wrestles. And the funny thing about arm wrestling is like there's normally not any warm up. So you're going from like being totally cold to putting this lateral shear force on your elbow at maximum contraction that you can produce. With cold tendons and stuff, and it's a recipe for micro tears in your tendon sheath.
I can testify. My arms were completely seized for a few days. So,
do you notice now if you do you get any pain if you were to lift with them now?
Oh yeah, I've had it for a long time.
Right, motorbiking,
dirt biking, and going to the gym and not stretching. So anything back or bicep related, I've always had a pain. Like I expect it every time I go and train those body parts.
Yeah.
But that arm wrestle that I had a few weeks ago, that flared it up the worst I've ever seen it.
Sure. Yeah. So that was my introduction to that kind of injury came through rock climbing, and I bought a book called One Move Too Many, and they just had a expose basically of all the different typical climbing injuries that come, which are all forearm and hand related and stuff like that, right? Because you're putting a lot of strain through the arms. And in that, they talk a lot about that, those micro tears in the tendon sheath. So just kind of like what I said, your tendons, when they're not warmed up and there's not a lot of blood flow around them, are kind of like a dry rubber band. So they're not overly stretchy. When you're warmed up, they're plenty stretchy. So once you get moving, if you ease into exercise, you warm yourself up, and then your joints and tendons become flexible, and that's when it's safe. And that's why like the warm up is actually really critical, and it shouldn't be skipped. And especially if you're doing something that's at such a level of intensity like an arm wrestle, right? That's all out. That's 1 rep max, right? It's for sustained static tension. So not only is it like just you flexing your muscles around the joint as hard as you can, which is creating tension on the tendons, there's also the other guy pulling on the arm, creating that lateral shear. Like you're trying to rotate your bicep this way, he's pulling it that way. So maybe the bigger muscle's keeping this bone straight and that bone's moving, and those tendons are getting fucking stretched. And so if they're not warm, pain.
How do you recommend warming up?
Just gentle arm exercises, anything like push-ups.
So like push-ups, light bicep workout or something.
Yes, something that. So my climbing regiment warm-up would actually be so like full shoulder windmills with force, so that I'm like forcing blood, like centrifugal force that forces blood into my arm, and then I do from my knees. Actually, I do like the wrist warm-up push-up. So where you're like here and you push up onto your hands. So you go off the top of your hand with your wrist bent in towards the middle, and then you roll up onto your knuckles and back down onto the back of your hand. And that just warms up the other side of the top of the forearm, which again is a muscle group that's often neglected in workouts. causing elbow pain and different things, right? Most pain that people are getting is a result of some muscles that like aren't in balance, and they're creating weird forces at the joints, and then the joint hurts.
Which is one of the issues I've been having. So actually, you're right. It does come down across my forearm. I've been getting dry needling done lately, and that's one of the areas she's been targeting is the forearm as well, because it's just seized right up.
Yeah.